Rhythm and blues, R&B, a sensual blend of the best of African American music, where the soulfulness of gospel and the blues meets the wild rhythms of jazz. Toss in some swing, funk, folk, rock. Simmer it in a history of struggle and resistance, and you've got music with not only a story to tell, but a beat that just won't quit.
R&B emerges in the years immediately following World War II, and it reflects a couple different things. Number one is the end of the war, and with the increased economic prosperity that you have in Black communities, you have the development of independent African-American record labels, and you also have an increased number of radio stations that are catering to Black communities. And so people who are looking for kind of up-to-date dance music then have presented to them this new music that's kind of a combination of small group swing with elements of blues.
It went from big bands then to small combos for many different reasons. One being a lot of people went off to join the war effort. And then from there, you started to have these new sounds with swing and the swing band era, and different beats and rhythms beginning to develop. And they started to experiment. And the sound of R&B, that swing doo-wop, started to be created. The big key for R&B was technology with radio broadcasting and jukebox. Some of the first radio stations were promoting R&B sound, and they quickly started to only have a Black-centric R&B rotation, which became very popular.
DJs played this exciting new music to an ever-widening audience, breaking down barriers and crossing color lines. Electric guitar fueled its explosion into the mainstream and spurred a new name: rock and roll.
Rock and roll was really a marketing term that was applied to R&B in order to market R&B to audiences of white teenagers. So really in the very early days, there is not much of a distinction between R&B and rock and roll, except for the race of the consumer market.
It's crossing all audiences, and young people are becoming charged and excited by the performance of Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Ray Charles. And now all young people are dancing and listening to the same rhythms.
Motown was one of the first Black record labels to really do that crossover. They used a lot of string instruments,
incorporating rhythm and blues with a symphonic element. So now Motown's R&B is approachable for a more conservative listener. You also have white artists adopting the sounds of R&B. The most popular example, of course, would be Elvis Presley, who is imitating and repackaging the sound. It crosses over from white and Black audiences, and now creates a popularity for R&B that's explosive.
R&B featured the day's most dynamic voices, and those voices were becoming more vocal. As the music evolved, its artists did too, marching head-on into social commentary and protest.
You have artists who are incorporating explicitly political and activist messages into their music. People like Sam Cooke with A Change Is Gonna Come. People like Curtis Mayfield and The Impressions. So you have the use of music as a platform for advocating for a change. And that's particularly pronounced once you get into the 1950s and especially the 1960s.
So when we think about the civil rights movement, when we think about all of these injustices, music has been right there to tell the story. The Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. A lot of people know her for Respect, these women empowerment anthems. But she was right there with Dr. King, singing at rallies, using her voice to uplift communities.
Music artists talked about not just freedom, but also self-love, Black love, and activism and achievement.
You cannot suppress our voice, even though you might try. That's the gift of Black music, that it always rises.
R&B music continues to develop in the 70s with the sound of soul, funk music, and then disco music. And you're gonna hear R&B's influence on rock music of the 80s. R&B music is the music that gets rid of the race label.
And then you had pop, which is in essence a form of R&B. MTV, BT, with the rotation of videos, really helped keep pushing R&B and those sounds out to new generations.
Today, you don't hear musical sound without hearing the influence of R&B. Musicianship, lyrics, and the singing is all an important part of almost all of our musical genres. It pulls from blues music, it pulls from jazz music, and it creates its own sound that's telling a story for the generation it's birthed in. Because R&B pulls from so many past musical genres, it blooms in almost all forms of music today. Want to get a closer look at the impact of Black music in America? Visit and support the National Museum of African American Music at nmaam.org.